Hi, so today we'll go through a writing piece that was submitted by one of our YouTube viewers, so Sa Che. So thanks for submitting this, and what I'll do is I'll go through the topic and as you requested in detail and be quite critical. Um, but reading through it quickly, it actually sounds quite good, so I'll be as critical as I can on it. Um, by going through each topic. So, without looking at the topic, um, without even knowing what the topic is other than dinosaurs, I know it's going to be a creative writing piece just from looking at how the I guess sentences are set up, use of adjectives and whatnot. So let's start. My mind raced as I was processing the horrible news just given. We were going. The professor had just confirmed that we were going back to the past to collect some sediment as samples and hopefully change history. The age of the dinosaurs was told to me as a child as a prehistoric tale, but now humankind has proved this period had existed, and the professor, Raven, and I was to go back and redefine history. The process would be delicate, and we must be cautious. If not, something that was never meant to happen could. Okay, so I'll do my track changes here. So when I first read this, to be honest, I feel a bit confused because I think there are issues with tenses. Okay, the second would be feel there might be a bit of repetition in going around. Sorry, going around what the topic is. Not what the topic is, but what you're trying to get at. What I understand from reading through it, is that it's a time travel story. Okay, um, and you're about to go back in time to collect dinosaur to collect, I guess, sediment samples from, I guess, what appears to be, I guess, a professor. Okay, first things first, I would think in terms of improvement, I guess I just don't understand why it would be horrible news. Um, so the professor, could you describe him? Because it seems like he's quite an important character, I guess. Um, and there's also a lot of telling. Okay, so you're saying that you're going back to the past to collect some sediment as samples and hopefully change history. What do you mean by changing history? Okay, the age of the dinosaurs was told me. Okay, has told me. I guess that would really change this a lot. So my mind raced as I was processing. So as I processed the horrible news, the professor had announced we were going. Okay, instead of the professor had just confirmed that we were going back to the past, you could say we were going back in time. Back to a time when dinosaurs roamed. When huge and man-eating dinosaurs roamed. Okay, so now the man-eating brings up the horrible news. Why? The crazy grey-haired professor wanted to collect sediment samples, hoping that he'd change history with a new discovery. Okay, the age of the dinosaurs was told me again. It not was told. The age was recounted to me as a child when I was a child. Again, hoping that he changed history with a new discovery would be enough. And again, why would you redefine history? Again, he'd make a new discovery, so I'd get rid of that. The process would be delicate and we must be cautious. If not, something that was never meant to happen could. I would rephrase this. I'll give you a chance to, I guess, redo this anyway. Um, but one of the things that should really be developed within writing is being able to review your writing, say within 1 to 2 minutes at the end. So this is how I would change it. My mind raced as I processed the horrible news. The professor had announced. We were going back in time, back to a time when huge man-eating dinosaurs roamed, and when barren lands and insects the size of your head were commonplace. Why? The crazy grey-haired professor wanted to collect sediment samples, hoping that he'd change history with a new discovery. Whilst I knew we had to be careful, it was exciting. The hairs on the back of my neck spiked with excitement. Okay? So this is what you want to write in an introduction. You've introduced this crazy grey-haired professor who wanted to collect sediment samples. You've explained, where you're going back in time, why, and a crazy grey-haired professor expects to change history with a new discovery. You haven't in the old version. You said the Professor Ravin, and that's all you really mentioned about him. I guess the professor is, not a major character, but a character that also needs some description. And if he's not, a major character compared to the narrator, you'd have to put a quick description of what he wants and why he wanted it, and then in a way shove him aside to then focus on the main part, but he would be complementary to your whole story. Okay, so let's move on to the second paragraph. There was a tingling sensation as slowly each atom that made me up was correctly put together again. Again, this is I guess this is what I get from this is that you're showing the process of how you're time traveling. I was standing in the exact same spot I was before, but now hundreds of millions of years before that. That's fine. Okay? I'll highlight that in green. So that's perfect. As I struggled to my feet, I glanced around the environment. Okay, you don't need to go, I was in now. The reader exactly knows where you are. No type of society existed. A gossamer light shone through the shady treetops and settled on a stone. It was like an entrancement. Um, I would just get rid of it. I could feel my body being pulled towards this invisible force. The reason, I guess, you don't need to get rid of something like this, but the reason why I get rid of things is that a good creative writing story has, it's not only about, I guess, what you put into the story, it's also about knowing what to exclude, because I guess you can put a lot of things into a story, um, but then you can include a lot of things that may add to the story, but you might add, say, 1%, or it might actually detract from the full story. So just say this little part here, it was like an entrancement. If you include it and it say it adds to the story by 1%, but if you then take it out, it could add to the story, say, 5%, because when you take something out, you then put the focus on something else that is already in there. Okay, so that's also a strategy within creative writing itself. You have to know what to include, and also don't be afraid to take something out if you don't think it adds to it, because I guess if you take something out, it will enhance the story in other ways. And that's something that you get when you do a bit of reading in stories. So I could feel my body being pulled towards this invisible force. This was no ordinary stone. It was the exact same stone from my father's notebook. Um, I guess a lot of people would find the confusion here. What does your father's notebook have to do with this stone? And why is there a stone in your father's notebook? Because maybe I'm not sure what it is, but if it's a exact same stone described in my father's notebook, yep. And as I was about to pick up the stone, the professor and Raven materialized, and we were soon off to our journey. Um, who's Rave? Who's Raven? I assume that Raven was actually. Oh, okay. So the professor, Raven, and I was to go back. So it's were to go back and redefine history. Again, who's Raven? Do you really need him in there? Who's Raven? Is he a character that needs to be in here? Um, does he add more confusion to the story? Okay, so Raven apparently is another character. I don't know who Raven is. He could be the friend. Um, but again, this is part of planning the story. Do you really need Raven in this story to create the whole storyline? Um, the likely question is no. Okay, so as I was about to pick up the stone, the professor and Raven materialized, and we were soon off to our journey. Um, what journey are you talking about? Talking about because I because what I did was I thought you were already on your journey, because at the start here there was a tingling sensation as slowly each atom that made me up was correctly put together again. So I'm assuming that you were time traveling. I would assume that Professor would have time traveled with you. So have you been going there by yourself? You found a rock, and then they materialized, and then the journey is something else. Again, you, there's a bit of confusion here. So we were running for our lives. Again, this is a separate event. How does this link to the other? This link to the last paragraph. Okay, with creative writing, it's sort of like watching a really good movie. You need to know that there's a beginning, middle, and end. So if your main event is that you're running for your lives, you have to slowly build that up. And something like a stone picking up a stone does not build something like that up. You build up little events towards that thing. So if it's running from Tyrannosaurus Rex, you would time travel into a place. You would then watch around, and you'd worry about the eyes that are looking towards you. You hear a growl here or there. You put something, you put little ominous of little mini events leading to the major events. Okay, because what you've got here is a event with a stone from your father's notebook, which I'm not sure how it pulls together, but then the stone doesn't really relate to this Tyrannosaurus Rex. So it seems like there's a lot of jumping from events, and in a way, that's not good creative writing. Creative writing, because unless those um, events are linked together in a very cohesive and well written way, because you can do it in that way, but it's still, there is some sort of flow. Um, if there is no flow, well, then you do lose marks, because creative writing is, if you break it down into simple things, it's beginning, middle, and end. Okay, and you want to make sure that you get those things right. So, had it not been for Revan's clumsy footsteps, we would have been safe and not running from the most treacherous dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus Rex. I guess spelling here. My legs ached and my breath was cutting short at every pant. Keeping my eye on the narrow path, I used my peripheral vision to seek shelter. Somewhere in the darkness of the forest, I saw a dimly lit cave. I signalled for the professor and Raven to follow me. As we ran in the entrance, the ground beneath us gave way and we fell. The pitch black darkness engulfed us. Okay, this actually sounds like a great ending. Okay, you know that obviously they're no longer there, um, and you've got a really good event here, but you need to expand on it. So your event was really running from T-Rex, right? You um, you need to make that the main thing. Whilst I understand what the main event here, you haven't built it up. Okay, the only way you've built this up is, had it not been for Ramsden's clumsy footstep, we would have been safe. That's not really building the story up to the main event. What you really should be doing is saying, out of nowhere, uh, the monstrous beast with sharp white teeth emerged from, um, the dripping wet leaves. Raw. We all looked at each other in dread. It was T-Rex, the most treacherous dinosaur ever. Um, and off we went. My legs ached, um, and keep going. So I guess that's my commentary there. Um, I guess major issues that need to be fixed up, where points are actually being lost, is in this idea of planning. Okay, I can see here that with the beginning, whilst I can see there is some form of structure, um, it needs to be refined. Okay, beginning, middle, and end. You need to have a real main event, and you need to bring that out. What you also need to do is, whilst you've got a lot of good things going, you've got great choice of words for describing things. I guess the other thing is tense. That's also something where, if you don't get your tense right, the reader is not sure of isn't sure whether they're in the past, present, or future, and if you confuse it around, it's very confusing. I guess there's a unease that's there. What else? Yeah. So again, the other thing is, um, don't include, I guess, unnecessary, say, non-value added. This is a business term. Non-value added, I guess, characters, or you know events. So what I mean by that is, say, this picking up a stone. It doesn't add value to the whole of the story, because the story is really about running away from Tyrannosaurus Rex and then falling into darkness. That's that's what the story is about, and getting away from Tyrannosaurus Rex because you're traveling back in time. So that's really what you should focus on, not picking up a stone. And then the characters, well, you should really limit that to, say, the professor and yourself. Why? Because by not including Raven, you can then expand on, the characteristics of the professor and yourself, and then the reader gets an idea of, okay, well, crazy professor, young student. Let's see what sort of crazy adventure they go on, and that's what makes stories really interesting. Okay, so when you add things that don't add value, you're actually taking away from the quality of the story itself. Yeah, so there's a lot of good things there, but there's also a lot of things in terms of planning, where there are actually major structural issues in the story that you need to address, to score well in the exam. Hopefully that's helped you, and what I'll do is I'll also send, if just message me your email, and I can send the Word document out for you if you want to look through some of the review notes. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed, and best wishes for your exam this Saturday. Okay, good luck. Bye.